In Invincible, we discussed how during Oliver's funeral there was actually a huge fight between Mark and Alan, since Mark blames the Unopan for his brother even being in this whole situation. However, once Eve breaks it up by confronting Mark about how reckless he always is, and how it even cost his family 5 years without him, eventually these two take this discussion elsewhere as things are starting to calm down. But back at the front of the funeral, we see Alan landing just in time to keep Omni Man from heading up there himself, as Alan apologizes to Haluma, Oliver's Lobster Wife, while he also has to explain why he just fought Mark to Terra, as she tries really hard to not punch him in the eye too, because I guess it just runs in Mark's family. So there's clearly a lot going on, but finally returning to Mark and Eve, they hit that good old 1-2 special of sitting on a roof and talking as they grieve Oliver, and Mark asks Eve if she understands what it's going to take to bring all of this to an end, but Eve replies that Thragg took Oliver, he tried to take Terra too, she gets it. Once again, Mark really wants to make sure Eve understands, telling her, listen, I'm not a hero anymore. I'm not even trying to be a hero. I don't want to save Thragg or hear his story or even bring him to justice. When I find him, I'm going to kill him. As Eve responds, no, we're going to kill him, because she says she's never letting Mark out of her sight again, as Mark tries to talk her out of it but eventually agrees, and Eve says that there's one more thing that they need to take care of, because this entire time she's regretted not doing it before he went missing 5 years ago, and that's a wedding. Now, would I personally choose to have a wedding right after the funeral of my brother and basically invite all of the same people? Hell no, but different strokes for different folks, I guess, and Eve even acknowledges it to Haluma, telling her that she's sorry that this isn't ideal timing, but hopes she gets why this has to happen right now, since Eve and Mark aren't sure if they're even going to survive what comes next. Thankfully, Haluma is a good sport, saying she actually kind of needed something like this to remind her there's still happiness out there in the world, as Nolan and Debbie offer to watch over Terra for the night, with Mark and Eve flying off to their honeymoon, but they aren't going to be giving Terra a sibling. Actually, Mark and Eve take their rings off to put them away, as Eve says they'll only put them on once all of this is over, so that they have something to look forward to when it's all said and done. As Eve tells Mark that he's right, heroes are bullshit, and it's time for them to hunt down Thragg once and for all. So let's enter into the final saga next.